So welcome and good evening to this Haag-Striet webinar. We are having two very dedicated surgeons tonight with us, David Goldblum and Pascal Imesch. Good evening. It's a pleasure for me to introduce our speakers tonight. David Goldblum is Chief Medical Officer and Specialist for anterior segment surgery at the Palace Clinics, one of the largest eye care providers in Switzerland. He has more than 25 years of experience in the field and acts in various functions for international ophthalmic societies and teaching institutions. He also was part of the development team of the Eyestar and conducted the CE registration study done for the Eyestar. Pascal Imesch is founder and head of the iPark private practice in Bern, Switzerland. He has more than 30 years experience in the field and runs his own practice for more than 20 years, providing eye care in every specialty. Thank you very much for joining us. We're going to start with David presenting his first experience with the device and also the numbers from the CE registration study. He's then going to be followed by Pascal, and he's sharing with us his first experience in the clinics in a real world environment. And then we will follow with the Q&A at the end. So thank you very much. David, thank you. It's your turn now.
Thomas, thank you very much for the kind introduction, and also thank you very much to the whole team from Haag-Streit. I have the pleasure to show you our first experiences with the Eyestar, saying that I've been involved already in the Lensstar 20 more years ago when this device was developed. You know probably that in OCT there has been a change from the time domain OCT to now the swept source OCT diagnostics in the retina. The same has happened in the anterior segment, and in the slide before you just seen a lot of different devices which have been brought to the market or are in development for anterior segment surgeons with swept source OCT technology in it. And also Haag-Streit and myself involved in that quest have for years now developed a device, a new machine, which uses a swept source OCT for diagnosing and measuring the eye. And the special thing about this device is that it actually has all the capabilities of a swept source machine for imaging. It has the capabilities of the measurement for the whole biometry, eye length, topographics, lens tilt, after implantation of an IOL, the lens tilt again. Everything can be done on a pure swept source OCT measuring. So it's a really helpful tool. It's an addition to what we had with the Lensstar, and now the Eyestar has been brought to the market. On top of it, as all the other devices and the Lensstar as well, it has a image taking device. It takes a high resolution picture, which is nice and useful for surgical planning. It also has the old standard keratometry with LEDs for comparison for different cases, difficult cases, to have improved precision. And it is an absolutely comfortable machine. It does everything on almost one click, and I am even able to measure myself in front of the machine without the help of a technician. So that shows how easy the software and the automatic measurement is nowadays with this device. I want to show you some images which the swept source imaging tool takes at the same time. As you can see here, you see the complete cornea, including the angles, iris, the lens, and if there's something in the features, there's some little densities, you can see them as well, going back up to the macula. I have to say that it's not useful for macular diagnostic. It's an anterior segment device, so focusing on the cornea, on the angle, on the iris, on the lens, and the anterior features. That's where you have it, where you can use it. It's not a retinal OCT device. It's very fast. It takes a lot of measurements. There has been another webinar with the Mandalay pattern. It's a unique pattern they have been developing for measuring and actually taking the OCTs from the anterior segment. I want to show you some examples of images. You see here a pseudophakic IOL in the eye, deep anterior chamber. You see here typical intact. This is an enlarged cornea. You can see an anterior segment, an artisan lens, a phakic IOL, vitreous densities. I will show you an example afterwards. Thickened cornea with Fuchs dystrophy. It's a quite severe case. You can see actually really like talons on the endothelial side. And here you see a disectomy with a pseudophakic eye. And you can clearly see that's the lamellar. You can distinguish how thick the lamella is, and all these measurements can be done on that device. This is a DMAC, and it's actually a patient after a week of DMAC, and you have a loop in there which you can let it run. You see pseudophakic patient, some densities in the vitreous, but you can clearly see on all these different scans that there is a little dehiscence in this DMAC lamella. And as you know, for a surgeon, we want to rebubble when there is about a third of dehiscence liquid underneath. So this is a nice way to actually measure and see the patient postoperatively and decide, should I rebubble or not? Is this really a third or not? And it's really helpful for me, at least, to use that one. Another example is the automatic biometry. We will hear more from that from Pascal later on. Just I want to give you some experience which we had before I show you the data. What we did is that when you do it automatically and you have vitreous densities, the automatic device might mistake some vitreous Haag-Striet hyalosis as the posterior lens, and you manually adapt it. So you see that you have a red flag underneath for lens thickness, which always should raise a red flag with you. The yellow flags might be too many from Haag-Striet for security reasons, but red flags are red flags, and there you really should go into and see what it has. And you see its corneal thickness, lens thickness, anterior chamber depth, and manually corrected the lens thickness, and again biometry, the eye length. So that just as an awareness if there are vitreous densities which this device might mistake as some posterior lens capsules, but it's really rare. The automatism is really nice. You have the lens tilt. I talked about it. You have the angles which you can see, which is ideal if you're implanting premium IOLs to see if there is contraindication, especially if there's a large angle or if there's a deep anterior chamber, if there's a very thick lens. So again, this gives you a full picture of your patient's eye, which is really nice and helpful. Topographies, I don't want to go too much into details. I want to show you the results later on. You get what you use, the curvature maps with axial and elevation, ellipsoid, curvature maps, posterior elevations, pachymetry maps. Total corneal maps are not yet included, but Haag-Striet is working on it, and they should be released hopefully soon. This is an example of a pellucid marginal degeneration. You can see this was from the study, what it looks like. Clearly you can see in the anterior axle the PMD. I use a case here as well, which was not part of the study, but I want to show you the image, and what you mostly used is the pentacam image. So you can see that this device brings you all the the images, what you're used to, and you actually can define them how you want to have the prints out. So it's a full topography device. As well, it calculates the Cernic polynomials up to 4th order. You can use them. There's a separate webinar by Thomas and Warren Hill, where you can hear and listen to all the advantages of the Cernic polynomials, which you have here, and actually can show the patient in simulation with Snellen or Landolt rings what they can expect with multifocals or with astigmatic IOLs. Color imaging, I told you and explained you that this is taken and hopefully it can be incorporated into some microscopy devices sometime. And I want to come into the CE study which we have done. That's the setup in the room. We had 46 patients, subjects, cataract patients, pseudophakic patients, and young healthy eyes, which we measured. We measured them on these 4 devices. The Eyestar, which at the time was still with a black cover, don't be surprised, it's become lighter and wider. The Pentacam, the Lenstar, and the Atlas. All these 4 devices, and it's been done in a random order. So not every patient has started on the left and went to the right, but it was in a random order that different patients had started on different devices in randomness. So even there was a proper setup for that study. What has come out? If we compare the results between the Eyestar and the Lenstar, we did a lot of measurements, we did a lot of repeat measurements, and actually the axial length was unsurprisingly more accurate because to a higher repeatability with the Eyestar than the Lenstar. It was about 3 times better. Already the Lenstar has a very, very high accuracy and repeatability, but with the Swepsus device, it could even be improved, so that was an advantage. If you look at the Blanda-Altman, it's very unsurprising that the correlation is absolutely perfect, and there's really minimal difference in any eye length of axial length between the 2 devices. Looking at the anterior chamber measurements, same thing with a Swepsus OCT. Even though with the Lenstar we have very good and high accuracies and repeatabilities, it even was 2.5 times better again with the Eyestar than the Lenstar. And the same thing here, looking at the Blanda-Altman plots on all the different eye or anterior chamber thicknesses, from, you see, very shallow to 2.4 millimeters shallow anterior chambers to up to 5.2 millimeters. That's in pseudophakic eyes, obviously. There's a higher accuracy. There's one outlier which had a difference of about 0.178 millimeters, which still is clinically not of relevance, but you can see otherwise there's everything really, really nice in order. Lens thickness, again, Swepsus device, more measurements, faster, and repeatability, more accurate, higher repeatability rates with the Eyestar than the Lenstar. Looking at the Blanda-Altman, same thing here. You see the thin lenses of the pseudophakic IOLs or the phakic IOLs, usually between 3 and 5.5 millimeters thicknesses, and again, very, very low standard deviation. There's 2 outliers. Everything absolutely as one would expect and want to have a device like that. Same thing for corneal device, cornea thickness, central corneal thickness measured here between those 2 devices. As you can see, the Lenstar is already a very accurate and repeatable device regarding corneal thickness. Still, the Eyestar is a little bit better, again, thanks to the swept source OCT and looking the Blend Altmans, that will be the same thing here. When we come to the K readings, the K measurements between the keratometries between the two devices, they have a similar pattern, a similar principle, and obviously there is the same thing. It's a bit more repeatable, accurate, the Eyestar than the Lensstar, but that's not as impressive as with a swept source when we're looking at LEDs, reflectivities. Still the same thing. Blend Altman is absolutely online with all Ks from 39 diopters up to 47 diopters. Everything is in sync, and here as well on the standard deviation. Nothing to ask or say for against it. If you look at the measurements between the Eyestar and the Pentacam, we have a higher repeatability and accuracy. One thing which is nice about the Eyestar as well is the measurement speed regarding the direct case. It takes about 2 seconds for the Pentacam to take the measurement, whereas the Eyestar takes images with the LEDs, and hence is much faster in the direct case than the Pentacam. That's what it looks like. You have some dispersion, some outliers here, up to half a diopter plus minus in the standard deviation, which is not surprising. It mainly comes from the SIM case, which we compare to real case in those two devices. If we compare SIM-K to SIM-K between the Eyestar and the Pentacam, it even goes further out, because it's the same measurement principle, saying that it's SIM case. One is on a Scheinpflug basis, and the other one is on the OCT basis. But these are SIM case, and that explains why the Blend Altman plots are looking a bit more dispersed, even some slight deviation between the two devices. It doesn't tell you which one is more accurate or which one is the more exact measurement. That you don't know out from these Blend Altmans. It just gives you the hint that there is a difference between the two devices. Posterior case in both devices, actually very nice again, of no clinical relevance. The differences mean posterior case. And if we compare the device to a Placido device, which is the Atlas, the fourth device which we compared it to, there it's very unsurprising that with a Placido device compared to an OCT device, if you have simulated keratometries, that the repeatability and the accuracy is definitely much better and higher. Again, some dispersion in the standard deviation of the Blend Altman, which probably is mainly due to the Atlas device and the measurement principle in that old Placido devices. So I want to conclude to let you know that this device, this machine is actually really a nice addition to our daily practice. It has been shown in this study that it is equivalent, if not better, to the gold standard of the Lensstar, the known standard of the Pentacam with the Scheinpflug device, and the old Placido device, which is the Atlas. It gives you a lot of additional features which these devices don't have in them by itself, all of them, and hence I really like it, and I use it on a daily basis now. It's been a long quest with Haag-Streit, and just to conclude, I want to show you what it looks like, and inside such a development team, what these machines look like when you open them up and when you fiddle around with the technicians, the physicians, and everybody in the team. And that's thanks to the study nurses who have performed the study. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, David. Thank you very much for this nice presentation. I would like to hand over to Pascal for the second talk about his first clinical experience in a busy practice. Pascal, it's your turn. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Thomas, for inviting me to that seminar. And I will gladly present our experience in the practice with the Eyestar. I waited during development for years to have that Eyestar in our practice, and we were extremely happy when we finally received it. And I'll tell you about our first experiences. Now, what I wanted, I wanted this new device basically to improve patient care and our workflow. Up to now, we used the Eyestar for biometry, which still needs a little bit guidance. And with the cone, we only had Placido-based topography of the anterior corneal surface and curvature. So what I wanted is to delegate the biometry routinely to the reception and to a technician. And I dreamed that basically every patient would just have a routine biometry, topography, and also angle measurement and pachymetry of the whole cornea, and to optimize patient flow, and also for myself that I can just look at the data whenever I wished to. So that's why we waited for the Eyestar, and additionally, I personally tried them, but do not particularly like the devices with the Scheimpflug camera. So I was really waiting very much for a swept OCT based topography and biometry device. So what I really liked about the Eyestar is the measurement. You see here a movie of a measurement, I have to admit, of an optimal patient, which takes only a few seconds per eye for everything. And then it switches to the left eye. The same happens again. It takes the topography, keratometry, actual measurement, and then you're done. Now, I have to admit, this is the optimal Haag-Streit employee with a good compliance, open eye, and no cataract. What I particularly like about the Eyestar device, first of all, it's easily delegatable to a technician. You have seen it takes only a couple of seconds. And then the screen is very clear. I have all the measurements that interest me in one simple screen that I see. I have the topography of both eyes. I have the photography. I have the anterior segments, the lens tilt, the corneal mark. I see all the relevant numbers in front of me, just in one view. This, again, the same screen, a little bit larger. You can then switch to the detailed screen here, the A scan and the B scan. I was very often used to not having a proper axial length because the dense cataracts that sometimes occur. And then you just try, you switch to cataract mode, you interpret the A scan, And here you can actually see the measurements, you can adapt them, you can even see a thickened retina in case of an epiretinal membrane, for example. It's very, very easy to adapt the scans to the proper measurements and judge how reliable they would be. Then the keratometry measurements, you see all the actual numbers. You can interpret the asymmetry of the astigmatism. You have all the different maps that you need. And I'm, of course, waiting for additional measurements and analysis, a special keratoconus screening, which is due to come. Additionally, this came with a software update. You have all the Wernicke polynomials, which is a great feature. This is something I use with every cataract patient, also for patient information. You can easily remove the low order aberrations and show the patients, depending on pupil size, how much he would see. We usually use the Snellen knee because our patients are used to this. And then you can tell the patient is, for example, if he could benefit from an aspherical lens, you can increase the pupil size and show them how it would be in the night, and show them if they would benefit from different lenses. We use them, the RMS of the high order aberrations, usually in 4 millimeters, to evaluate if the patient would be suitable for a premium lens, where we use roughly 0.3 micrometers as a cutoff. This is very helpful for patient selections for premium lenses. So everything is very clearly laid out. It's easily to use, and it's easily quantifiable. Additionally, you have the lens tilt in the axis of the largest tilt, which is not yet quantified, but can be help if the patient again would be suitable for a premium lens. This is more of a gut feeling that we look at, looking at the image and use that. But one thing that I really like is the footprint of the machine. It's very, very small. It fits on the table next to an endothelial camera or autorefractometer or whatever you have. The technician can take the measurement at this just after the autorefractometer or the endothelial cell measurement. The patient sits there. He doesn't have to move around. He doesn't even have to switch from one eye to the other. Everything is operated by a touch screen that you can attach wherever you want it. It's really easy and very small and looks very elegant. Now we come a little bit to the bashing part. I told you in the beginning that we wanted this device in order to improve patient flow. And I dreamed of having every patient just having a Eyestar measurement when he comes in at least once a year or the first time. In the beginning, the measurement did not perform like it did with young, healthy patients. Sometimes it took forever to take a measurement in old patients with ptosis, a stiff neck, not very steady fixation. Sometimes the device did not take a measurement and we didn't know why. So we were, I would say, disappointed in the beginning. So we called Haag-Streit and complained bitterly. And I have to say, Haag-Streit reacted within days, I would say. They improved the software immediately. They were always prepared to listen to our wishes. And after weeks, if not days, they came out with several new software updates, and all our concerns were resolved extremely quickly. Right now, the measurement process, even in complicated patients, is really completely painless. The software gives you guidance what does not work. It gives you guidance if the measurement has gone through completely and successfully, or if the results have some drawbacks. However, they are very clearly addressed. You know exactly what you can use, what you can't use. I have to say, recently, we didn't have any measurements that were not usable. In the beginning, we did always control with the Eyestar and compared if they were reliable. Right now, I cannot remember when I used the Eyestar the last time. The software updates that came almost weekly or monthly had great new features that we could use, especially the Cernicke analysis and the vision simulation, which is really a highlight of that machine. And I'm really looking forward to all the additional measurements, especially chamber angle quantification, as well as keratoconus screening. So right now we have the machine almost a year in our practice, and we use it daily for not only for cataract patients, but also for unclear cases in order to look at the corneal optical aberrations. It's easy to use. The technicians don't need a lot of introduction. They can use it almost immediately. We are very happy right now. The only problem now that I have is I don't know where to go with my Eyestar. So thank you very much for listening, and I'm gladly answering all your questions to the practical use. Thank you.
Thank you, Pascal. Thank you, David. Thank you for your kind introduction of the device and your very useful in-depth information on the use in a daily clinical practice. Let's have a quick look on the Q&A section, if there have been some questions already coming in. And what do we have here? Just a second. Oh, yes, there's one question. When conducting the CE study, what was your experience in the measurement process? I guess that goes to David. How long did it take to take the measurements on the real patients there?
It didn't take very long. So if you consider the whole measurement process, we've seen how fast it goes, how quickly it goes with the presentation that with Pascal. It takes maybe a little bit longer. I can't say in seconds, 30 seconds, the measurement altogether. It's a little bit longer. What I have to say, and what Pascal didn't mention, is that the measurements is really fast and automatic. It takes a while for the calculation, where the patient isn't involved anymore. So until you get the results, it takes a few seconds. It takes longer than the actual measurement process, and that's important to know and to understand, that there's a lot of data which is compiled in the machinery, and that takes a bit of time, but not very long.
Thank you very much, David. There's another question that came in. I guess it goes to Pascal. How did the Eyestar change your use of premium IOL?
I'm more cautious with premium IOLs. Before, I was well, not reckless, but quite straightforward, and used the data available to me, and talked it through with the patient, and basically used toric premium multifocals if the patient wanted to. And astonishingly, I didn't have a lot of complaints or problems. Most patients were happy with it. Now, since I have the Eyestar, and I have all those optical aberrations and Wernicke analyses, which tell me that I have trefoils and quadrifoils and comas and the cornea is irregular, I'm much more hesitant in telling the patient that he may benefit from multifocal IOL, and I think that there will be a learning curve, and losing a little bit my fear about doing wrong to the patient, but definitely I'm sure with experience it will improve the outcomes.
Thank you very much, Pascal. There's one, I guess, just a follow-up question to the previous and that goes, I would say, to both of you. Do you have any recommendation how far we can go if we have corneal imperfections visible on the topography, and when you would recommend not to go for any premium implant any longer?
Well, I start with my simple practical approach, and then David can argue that scientifically. As I said, I use as a rule of thumb an RMS of high order aberrations at the 4 millimeters pupil of 0.3 micrometers. So if I have more than that, which is quite often the case, I'm much more hesitant and discuss that with the patient quite extensively. And if I'm below that, I'm more confident that it will work. We didn't use that before, and it worked anyway. So as I said, it will be some kind of a learning curve.
I'm sorry, I can't add anything scientifically to that because there's no scientific evidence so far. We manage and practice it usually the same way, and that it's what you said. It's important. We have special patients with special corneas, and what you can nicely use it for is to temper expectations. With the vision simulations, for example, to show what is possible and feasible in these patients with these corneas. So it's on an individual basis that we make the recommendations and show and discuss it with the patient.
Thank you, David. There's another question from the audience. Is there zone-based keratometry which might be used with the Eyestar?
Yes, there is zone-based keratometry. You have like 3 zones which you can look at. I don't even know if it's planned for more zones, but zone-based keratometry is in the software in there.
I might quickly add one line. Yes, we do have the zone-based keratometry. We are offering right now a central 3 millimeter, then 3 to 5, and then 5 to 7 millimeter optical zone-based keratometry for the assessment of the astigmatism of a patient. Let's have a look if we have something in the chat which is new. Well, that's just a reminder for our YouTube channel, which is also important. So if you missed the beginning or an intermediate part of the webinar, or if you missed one of the earlier webinars, all the webinars are available also on the YouTube channel of Haag-Striet and also are available on our webpage. So feel free to go back and have a look again. I don't see any additional questions here neither on the chat nor in the Q&A section. So I would like to thank Pascal and David for their time and for their very valuable information. And to the audience, we do have more webinars to come. Visit www.haag-Streit.com, and I hope to see you soon again in one of our future webinars. Thank you very much and have a good evening.
Thank you to you as well. Have a nice evening. Bye-bye.
Thank you very much. Have a nice evening too.